Hello and welcome to the Authority of Love. I'm your host, Greg Williams, and after a little break for Christmas and New Year, we're actually back for our first Family Foundation Friday with Executive Director Mr. David Wolf. Welcome, David. Thanks for
Greg,
joining us.
good to be with you.
We had some good response from the end of last year. Did you
We
see
did.
that?
Yeah,
There
we
were
did.
quite a few that were watching it because you had such good stuff, man, and you guys are doing
It's all
such
you.
good work.
It's all you,
yeah,
Greg.
no, I don't get that many when I just do it. Okay, so, but remember, you can hear these on WJMM 99.1 FM, Radio Central Kentucky Christian Radio, or on their website WJMM.com. Click on the podcast tab, then the Love and Lordship links. You'll hear today's, the previous 2 days programs. Finally, you can hear these and many other Love and Lordship messages at vimeo.com, V-I-M as in mom, vimeo.com/love and lordship, and all the podcasts on loveandlordship.podbean, P-O-D as in dog, B as in boy, podbean.com. Listen, share, comment. We'd love to know what you're thinking and engage with you, and let's see what we can do to get this message out, especially the message today. Our plan is to have Family Foundation Friday every other Friday throughout the year, Lord willing, at least 2 per month, to keep you updated on issues of legislation and policy that are ongoing, and especially those that are priority when it comes to our culture, marriages, and families, the impact there. Now, David, having said all that, I know we've got the short session getting ready to kick in. Fill us in on that, and then we'll come back with some of the key topics, the hot topics.
Yeah, Greg. So the Kentucky legislative session in the short session year, which is this year, has gotten underway. Okay. So it is a 30-day session. So in last year, it was what's known as the long session. Those are 60-day sessions. This year it's 30 days. And the way they break that up and have the last several short sessions is they meet for a kind of a week at the beginning, then they break really for the rest of the month of January, then they come back in early February. So as we sit here right now, they will be reconvening part 2 of the short session, as they call it, coming up on February 7th, which I believe will just be next week.
Yeah. Next week or the week after, I think it is. Yeah. No, you're right. It's next week. That's right. When we're taping this. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So, it will be kind of I suspect a mad sprint once that kicks off.
This will be your first time with a short session.
First
right?
time here in a short session, and the other interesting thing is, there's a lot of new members.
Yes.
There's 20-something new members in the House,
Wow.
several new members in the Senate. So that first week that they met earlier in January, they took care of some business and setting committees and so forth, some of those items. But we really expect things are going to be kicking off in high gear. And, even though it's a short session, a lot of times they kind of somewhat limit the scope and the amount of issues in terms of time that they have addressed.
Sure.
I'm still very optimistic that there's a very strong opportunity to push the ball forward on the issues that we care about.
Excellent. That's what we want. It's a great segue because with that legislative calendar, we know that they prioritize is what they're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Say we want to hit these things as much as we can, and then people come in with their interest, like Family Foundation. So I know we mentioned this just a little bit at the end of last year. What are 1 or 2 of the main things that we need to be paying attention to as citizens of Kentucky, as marriages and families?
Well, 2 main issues that there's always multiple of issues.
Sure.
But 2 main issues that
We're trying to
that we
prioritize
expect we expect to have very important bills filed on very soon once they reconvene. Number 1 is the issue of parental rights. So this is an issue that we have worked on for several sessions. Kentucky is one of the few states that does not recognize parental rights as a fundamental right. And I think, Greg, you and I know this. I think most listeners know this, at their core. Parents ultimately, fundamentally have the right and the responsibility to guide the upbringing of their child, whether that's in the context of their education, in the context of their health care, in any context. But unfortunately, that's a higher level of protection that Kentucky needs to protect. But further than that, particularly in the educational context, we have just continued to see assaults on parental rights, and whether most prominently as it relates to pushing back against the LGBT indoctrination efforts that we know are happening in public schools here in the Commonwealth and across the nation. if folks have been engaging with us, and folks can get signed up at KentuckyFamily.org, it's a great time to get engaged. We put out a lot of important information during the legislative sessions. But if you may have seen, we have been continuing to highlight this LGBTQI toolkit that the governor and his Kentucky Department of Education commissioner that they put out before the start of the school year, and it had many concerning parts of it. But one of those issues that we've highlighted is this pronoun guidance that was issued that essentially said if a student is in school and wants to identify opposite of their biological sex, have a new name, be referred to a pronoun that's opposite of their biological sex, that essentially the school district teacher or employee would be forced to go along with that, even if it obviously violates truth,
right,
violate their religious beliefs,
biological truth.
But then also, even more concerning, or equally as concerning, Greg, was essentially trying to hide that information from parents.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did parental rights come in with that?
Right.
Because obviously we're having a clash now.
Right.
Education, government versus home and family.
Yeah.
Right. Fill our listeners in on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this has been an issue that has kind of been boiling and bubbling.
Yeah. Yes.
But I really feel like now, with the past couple of years, with just how widespread so many of these issues where parental rights have been infringed in many different contexts, and you're starting to see parents kind of rise up and go, well, hold on, wait a second. Who is, you hear some of these folks, whether it be President Biden in some comments that he gave last year, others essentially say, when your kids are in public schools, and this is where obviously a lot of the battles are playing out,
70% of the kids,
you're essentially turning your kids over to the government. I mean, that's the mindset, unfortunately, the worldview clash that's going on, and we know that's fundamentally not the case. And so that's why it's so important that we take the opportunity this session. And there's just so many, so many legislators ran on the parental rights issue, and this is an issue that is, near and dear to so many in the legislature. And we have seen, instances across Kentucky in the last months, in Anderson County, a school district assistant principal that simply wanted to inform parents and their folks in their school district that this policy was, that he was being asked to implement this policy. Yes. And when he chose to stand up and to alert his community about that, the school district came down after and put him on leave for a while. We're also continuing to see these situations where the privacy and safety of students are being violated because of these LGBT policies, radical, just crazy policies, Greg, that are opening the door and saying, if you, not only in terms of the pronoun, but if you identify opposite the biological sex, you should be able to use the bathroom, locker room facility. These are policies that are damaging to students.
Yes.
They infringe upon parental rights, and it is completely appropriate in the purview of the General Assembly to step in and say, we are going to set a common sense policy for the state of Kentucky. And so I'm hopeful that that's going to be a piece of legislation that gets done this year.
I know you will agree with me on this, and you asked me to do this when we started this a couple of months ago, because you do policy legislation, but I know your foundation. One of the key foundational issues of this is where the rights initially come from.
Right.
The government does not give us our kids, nor the rights and responsibilities of our kids. They're supposed to help make it the best they can be. God is the one who gives us our children.
Right.
God who then there bestows the rights and responsibilities on us, and that's at the heart of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Speak to that a little bit.
Well, you're absolutely true, and as Greg, I know you know, God is the one who created an ordained government, and the purpose of government
and male, female
is to uphold justice, to punish evildoers. But that's one of the foundational reasons why the Family Foundation exists. We seek to advocate for God-honoring public policies, because when we have policy that honors the Lord and is based in His truth, the truth, it is to the benefit of all people, families, and as you know, Greg, so many of the issues that we deal with economically, in terms of addiction and so forth, have to do with the fact that families have been fractured and broken, and obviously the church is fundamental in that. But you know, the law is a teacher, and so anything that we can do to push the ball forward to see God honoring policy
Yes.
is important.
So the question ought to be, what are we actually teaching?
Right.
If we know it's a teacher, what are we actually teaching? And if we're seeing the destruction, you said economic, I would add socioeconomic
Yeah.
and public health issues.
Right.
These are becoming overwhelming. I said this to your predecessor when I worked here at Family Foundation. There will not be enough money in the government coffers to take care of the issues and problems and devastation of many of these policies. And
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So are there any other things? We got a few more minutes here.
Yeah.
Is there another thing that we're looking at as well? I know we talked a little bit about the Born Alive protection legislation. Do you know more about that as well?
Well, so that is a federal piece of legislation,
Right,
you know,
right.
that has, I believe, has passed the House. But look, the issue of life continues to
Oh,
obviously
boy.
be front and
Yeah.
center. We just, you know, just a couple weeks ago, the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade,
Right.
the most, you know,
Right.
egregious decision in United States history. We continue to thank the Lord that decision was overturned, and certainly mourn and just our heart grieves for the 65 million plus that have been lost. But as that issue now is has been returned to the states, the battle to stand for life at the state level has become all the more important. And as we
Exactly.
sit here right now, we are still awaiting a Supreme Court decision from the Kentucky Supreme Court. As folks may remember, I think, Greg, we talked about this
Yes.
some towards the end of the year. The abortion industry has challenged Kentucky's pro-life laws, seeking to get the Kentucky Supreme Court to invent a so-called right to abortion in our Constitution.
Legislate from the bench.
And
in
that
other
is
words, right?
certainly an issue that is kind of, I hate to use this term, but hanging over the General Assembly right now as folks await. But look, at the end of the day, we know there is no right to abortion in the Kentucky Constitution. It is the purview of the General Assembly to be the ones to pass laws to protect life.
Make sure that's
They
right.
have done that, but we need to do more as
Yeah,
we continue to move the ball forward to stand for life and to see the end of abortion.
In line with that, I just read today, as we are recording
Yeah.
this, David,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks before it shows, but I read in Minnesota, they're getting ready to pass one that basically abortion all the way through
Yeah.
pregnancy, do nothing for a baby if it's born,
Yeah.
out of the womb and born. You just basically treat it like a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's what they're doing.
And this is why it is so important for Christians, for those that care about life, and
Yeah.
we all should
Yeah.
care about
Yes.
life.
And people in
Um,
Kentucky, we're talking
yeah,
about, right? That's what you're
absolutely.
saying, right?
Do not be deceived and think that, again, as we continue to be thankful that Roe was overturned
Yes,
before
yes.
its 50th anniversary, that the battle for life is over and won. It is not. We have just entered into the next phase, and you are going to continue to see states that are now going to be empowered to pass egregious, horrific
Yes.
pieces of
Yes.
legislation. But states like Kentucky and other pro-life states have the opportunity to
Absolutely.
end abortion, and it's going to continue to be a state-by-state battle as we move forward.
Tell people how they can get a hold of this stuff again real quick, and then I'll
absolutely.
close us out.
This is a great time for folks to go to KentuckyFamily.org and get signed up, get our email updates. We send out action alerts. We'll be equipping people with messages on set up. You go to our website, put in your address, a pre-populated message to support some of these bills. I also just want to plug on Tuesday, February 16th, we're having a Faith and Family Day at the Capitol. A great day for folks to come out and hear some more from these legislators and others about the importance of these bills. Folks can learn more at KentuckyFamily.org.
Excellent. And we're at loveandlordship.com, loveandlordship.com. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Stay tuned for Bill Reeser Encounter. I'm Greg Williams, and you're listening to The Authority of Love.